This is an Ice Guys Patreon exclusive.
Welcome to another Ice Guys team season preview video as 32 teams in 32 days rolls along. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith with you. And we were supposed to be joined by, you know him well, our guy Tim York, Goose. But Goose apparently had something rescheduled for work. He had to do something for work at the time of this recording. But he did send all of the Leaf season-long bets and preseason props, futures, everything he bet, he sent it to me in this long email. So we will mention that and relay it on what Goose is liking as far as Leaf-related season-long props and futures are concerned. So it's unfortunate he couldn't make it, but as you can see, we got our guy, Jay Rosehill, to make it, joining us here once again for another Leaf season preview video. My friend, Jay, how are you? Things good?
Doing good, man. Yeah, just summer's wrapped up and kind of wrapping our heads around hockey right now, which is coming down the barrel quicker than I think we anticipated, which is a good thing. So pretty excited to get the season going here.
One thing I've noticed too, and the Hockey Fights is a very popular website. You know, they have all basically the historical logs of not only NHL player fights, but AHL, all ECHL, junior. You go on down the list. I just happen to see their social media feeds, and they post video clips and highlights of current fights, older fights. I'm seeing a ton of Jay Rosehill showing up all of a sudden on Hockey Fights for the last year. I'm seeing like 10 or 12 different Jay Rosehill fights that they're posting on the Hockey Fights social media. People are showing you some love, my friend, still after all this time.
Yeah, that's good to see. I don't know where they're digging those up from, but it's cool to see Hockey Fights still going. They have been a staple for that kind of thing for a lot of guys like me who had to do their homework outside of the rink on what you might face in the upcoming games that you're going to play against these guys. So it's kind of cool. And I've noticed that too. They're chucking mine in there once in a while, but the footage is looking grainier and grainier as it gets older and older out there. So
no 4K in those days. There was HD, but no 4K. Yeah.
Right. I guess that must be what it is. I don't know what the deal is, but it didn't look that old when I was doing it, but nonetheless, good to get a shout out.
And just before we get into the Leafs, Alex and I have talked about this. The number of fights here early in preseason action this year, it's off the charts. I love it. You know, all these young kids are showing all kinds of flamboyance and just a will to show the coaching staff, hey, we can drop the gloves, we can bring that component to the team, we can stick up for teammates. It's just, I think that willingness to show the coaching staff that, hey, we can drop in the gloves to try to show what we can do. I love seeing it in the preseason because I know for sure we're going to see not even close to the same volume of fights once we get into the regular season.
I would agree. I don't know what's going on. If I think the league is turning into, or not turning into something, but just leaning more towards understanding the value in that kind of thing and the physicality. And you're seeing the teams that are winning the Stanley Cup, they have that brute force mentality. And, this kind of chicken shit hockey, that's street hockey, that's no hit, that no one has any set going on, but with themselves, it doesn't get you that far. It only gets you so far, and you need a lot more than that to win a Stanley Cup. And the leagues are starting to adjust to that, and I think you're seeing a little more of that, which to me is an awesome thing. I think the no-hit hockey is boring and painful to watch, and it doesn't look like it's inspiring or energetic or intense. And you start to lean back that way, I think is the right way to play the game, and it happened that way naturally just because of the speed of the game and the way it is. And I think that to try to take that out of it was, all for naught, as these guys are starting to lean back into the physicality, which is exciting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Not only are we seeing the physical teams go further in the postseason and win championships, but also, too, you have so much movement around, right? Like you can even say, even compared to your time, Jay, there's so many moving parts in an organization, not just free agents coming in, but you've got now where, junior kids are going to college, and, the time that they come up and come down and when they go to the AHL is all being thrown around. So the time to gel with your teammates is so limited and fleeting that I feel like now, especially when we get to next season, where we're going to have an even shorter preseason and I guess a longer training camp is how they're going to try and balance it out to make an earlier season start. You're going to only have so many moments to really show your stuff to your coaches and the staff, and also to galvanize yourself with your teammates. I think that's why we're seeing a little bit more physicality even just this early in the year. Now, these are guys who may be in the AHL or ECHL all year long, but they want to make an impact and a standpoint, and it's good to see that. It's fun to see that as a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys are trying to make hay while the sun shines, and there's a few different ways to do that. And these guys are realizing there's more than one way to get your name on the minds of some of the powers that be. So I remember it well, and it's good to see these guys are willing to do whatever it takes to get in that league, because it's it's their dream right there. And I think most players should be willing to do whatever it takes.
It's a great segue with Jay mentioned make hay while the sun shines. Toronto Maple Leafs. How many more years in this current Stanley Cup window do they have to make hay while the sun shines? Because they've certainly had a lot of cracks at it, a lot of playoff disappointments, several years in a row where they couldn't even get out of the fucking first round for the longest time. Well, at least now they got a couple first-round victories under their belt. Tampa Bay a few years ago, but again, Florida picks them off in the second round. And, of course, Ottawa last year beating them in the first round. And then, again, the Florida Panthers pick off the Leafs in the second round. But here's what you'll cling hope to if you're a Leaf fan. Which team in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year put the Florida Panthers through the ringer the most? Yeah, the Toronto Maple Leafs. No team played Florida tougher last year in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And we mentioned it a million times, but it's the first time we've had Jay to hear it, so I'll mention it again. If you're a Leaf fan, I think you're going to be eternally sick to your stomach that you're up 2-0 in that series against Florida. You're up 3-1 in game 3. You look like you're going to put the fucking nail in that coffin to this defending Stanley Cup champion Panthers team. And sure enough, they come back. They end up obviously getting the overtime win from Brad Marchand, the eternal Leaf killer, in game 3 to get back into the series 2-1. And then you've kind of felt the series had shifted. The momentum in that series at least had shifted a little bit. And sure enough, they tie it. And then we know the stink bombs that the Leafs laid in game 5 and 7 at home in that series. Unthinkable still. And if you wonder why Leaf fans, a lot of them are apathetic to the now departed Mitch Marner, Exhibit A will remind you about game 5 with his little figure skating pirouette in his own end, blind backhand pass into the neutral zone, picked off, does not hustle back on the back check, somehow gets beaten to his own net when he's in his own zone when he turned that thing over. And it's just one of the many tales of woe when it comes to one Mitchell Marner in the Stanley Cup playoffs for the Leafs. And that's the headline story, obviously, for the Leafs going into this year, that he's gone, to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, we'll see how he does there. There's people that think that Mitch Marner is not the answer come playoff time, and it's going to be the same shit with him in Vegas. And there are some people that say, you know what, it's a Toronto thing. He's going to go to Vegas, and he's going to thrive, and wouldn't be shocked if he wins the Stanley Cup there in Vegas with the Golden Knights. So it's interesting which side of that argument you fall on, but I think it was time for Mitch to go somewhere else from his standpoint, and I think it was time for the Leafs to let him go from their standpoint. It was just time to see somewhat of a shakeup in the core. I chuckled my ass off when I heard Craig Berube the other day talk about I'm glad I don't have to hear about the core 4 anymore and have to hear that term. That was pretty funny to hear that. Now, you can say the flaws of Mitch Marner are well known. Toughness, physical toughness, mental toughness, trying to be too cute, especially in the biggest games at playoff time. But you are taking a guy that had 100 points, out of your lineup. So where is that offense going to come from? You will miss that, certainly in the regular season. And there's a lot of things being bandied about. They traded for Matias Maccelli from the Utah Mammoth. They think he could be an answer. I definitely think Berube's leaning toward experimenting with him alongside Austin Matthews and Hungry Knies. 1 goal from you and Matthew Knies for the Leafs as well. That could be something that works. Maccelli with Austin Matthews and Matthew Knies. We'll have to wait and see if that is what Berube starts the season with. The top Max Domi could be up there at some point as well. But that's going to be the big challenge, who's going to replace that offense that you lose, with Mitch Marner being gone. Bobby McMahon's going to be someone that's going to be asked to step up offensively. Is he going to be capable of doing that? I like some of the depth additions when you talk about, it's at least good that despite the fact it looked like they were going to lose Marner for nothing, they ended up getting that sign and trade done with Vegas, and you get a very good, solid depth center in Nick Waugh back in return. Guy that's got a winning from a winning culture. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's going to bring that to the dressing room. So it's a nice addition by Brad Treliving to at least get something back for Marner with Nick Waugh. Dakota Joshua is a very intriguing pickup in the offseason too. Big guy who had a breakout offensive season last year with the Vancouver Canucks. I'm excited to see what he can deliver for this team. And Nick Robertson, man, it's like that addict. You can't kick the habit. You can't kick the addiction. And the Leafs are addicted to Nick Robertson. They just don't want to. They just don't want to let him go yet. They've considered it. They've been waiting on him, but clearly they still believe there's something there in Nick Robertson, and I believe that too. I think there's some skill there. You obviously need to see it on a more consistent basis for sure for this Leafs team. But like I said, if they can get something out of him, is Easton Cowan going to make the roster out of training camp? There's questions there, but the forward group, it's going to be by committee. You hope Scott Lawton can give you a little bit more on the offensive end this year, and hopefully a full season being with the team from training camp makes him more comfortable to have a little bit more of an offensive presence for this team. That's going to be important. Tavares, Nylander are going to be counted. Now, I don't think it's fair to assume Tavares is going to have the same offensive season that he had last year. That was outstanding. I don't think anyone saw that coming from John Tavares last year, but that was one of his best offensive seasons in a long time. 38 goals, 36 assists, 74 points last year. For the Leafs, just outstanding. He's basically a point-per-game player. At his age, to have that kind of offensive season, it was impressive. But you don't want to completely bank on that this year. There probably will be some offensive regression for John Tavares this year. The blue line, look, Morgan Rielly, Brandon Carlo, Jake McCabe, Chris Tanev, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Simone Bent. There's no concerns about the blue line as far as depth is concerned. Like, they're in a situation here. Rielly, Carlo, McCabe, Tanev, Ekman-Larsson, Benoit, are probably going to be the six come the start of the season. But look at all the extra pieces you've got there. You've got Philippe Myers, who stepped in certain games last year, played well. Matt Benning's been around the block. This Henry Thrun that they got from San Jose, I think they like some of the upside he delivers. It's another situation for the Leafs this year where if one or two defensemen go down, you got a couple guys there that could go into the lineup and fill in admirably, for at least a period of time. So there's some solid depth on the blue line for the Leafs. And we've talked about this, Alex and I. Alex, of course, the goalie guru who keeps charts of all the goaltending tandems. We're of the belief that the Leafs have one of, if not the best tandem in the NHL as far as goaltenders are concerned. Now, individually, are there better goaltenders in the NHL than Anthony Stoley the goalie, and Joseph Woll? Yes. Individually, there are. But we're talking as a packaged duo, a tandem, a 1A and 1B. I don't think you can do much better than that in the NHL. I think the Leafs are right up there with any team where you can say, as a tandem, it doesn't get much better than Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll. So to me, they're fine in net. Look, I think the key is going to be, the biggest concern I have is you take Marner's 100 points out of the lineup. How are they going to supplement that loss of production? And it's going to have to be by committee. I think Austin Matthews is fine. I'm not panicking. I know there are Leaf fans saying, what the fuck's happened to this guy with the drop in the goal scoring? And people got so frustrated with his lack of goal scoring that they ignored the other things he did so well last year. His defensive game was just not good, great last year for the Leafs. And people ignored that because he's supposed to score goals. This is a guy that scored over 60 goals. Like, he's supposed to put the puck in the freaking net. And he didn't do that at the level that we expect from Austin Matthews. But some of me believes that, look, the wrist was bothering him last year. I think that was a big part of it as far as his struggles to score. And I also thought he got a bunch of horseshit luck. How many times did he hit goalposts? How many times did he hit crossbars last year? It happened a ton. It happened an inordinate number of times for Austin Matthews. So you got to believe the shooting percentage will go up because the puck luck will be a little bit better. Like, seriously, he hit the post probably more than any player that I can remember in the NHL last year. So you got to believe that the puck luck will be a little bit better for him. Toronto, to me, is a playoff team. Can they win the division? We'll see. I think they're going to be in a battle for that to repeat as division champs. They're certainly a playoff team. Again, with the Leafs, I'm always, cautious about predicting anything more than maybe a first-round victory, given their history. but I still think they're going to be a very competitive team. I think the coaching, I think Craig Berube is still one hell of a coach. He'll find some answers. I think, and if they get that offense by committee approach to to pick up the slack for the 100 points that are gone with Mitch Marner out of there, then Toronto's still going to have a very successful season ahead, in my opinion. Alex, your thoughts here on the Leafs?
Yeah, like you said, it's always kind of tough to gauge how far this Leafs team's going to go, because we always have in the back of our minds, the inevitable collapse, right? That's just kind of the way we see it. But it's funny how we kind of start talking about physicality in the game and how it's still around, how it's still important. And you look at the makeup of this team compared to, say, 5 years ago, where they're built a lot more solid defensively. Like you said, they have one of the best goaltending tandems in the league. And they have an offensive punch, but it's not like Jay was saying, this isn't a street hockey team anymore. This is a team that I think has some kind of pushback and some fight. And I think that we're going to see that top six kind of rise up in the absence.
Did we lose Alex? I think we might have. We did. All right, we'll get back to Alex in a sec. Jay, your thoughts on the Leafs coming into this season?
Yeah, obviously the big change is bringing in some different bodies for Mitch Marner, and as Craig Berube said, it's not about replacing Mitch Marner, and it's not about necessarily replacing his last season was 100 points or his 92 points.
Certainly not about one person replacing him, that's for sure.
Yeah. Certainly not. And I think if you look over the last 5-6 years, you've seen them be very dynamic in the regular season. You've seen them, get over 100 points, and these guys are winning trophies, and they have Hart trophies and Rocket Richards, and they've won their division, and that's all fine and dandy. But it's just, I think there's a very strong difference between the regular season and the playoffs in the NHL, and I think that's more apparent now than has ever been. You talk about the street hockey and the new style of player, and what these new aged players coming into the league that are a little bit younger, what they value and how they learned the game, is on YouTube and Instagram oftentimes. And, they can do some pretty special things out there. And, you're talking about the Michigan and these toe drags and Bedard and all this stuff. And it's great, and it's high skill, and it's great to see, and it works in the regular season. But I just notice every year that when push comes to shove, these are men playing a man's game for the Stanley Cup. And that is always going to, come to fruition in the nitty gritty parts of a playoff series with these teams. And it seems like the teams like the Panthers these days and the Golden Knights at their back end, and the teams with, that grit and that vigor, and with some manly men that can come out and just take control of it, that bullshit goes away. The street hockey stuff goes away. No one's doing that in game 5, 6, or 7 of any series in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think the Leafs have fallen victim to that. Like I said, all their trophies and their accolades are great, but what has it gotten them when the going gets tough? And everyone's talking about, well, they can't score the big goal in, those elimination games, so we need more goal scoring. It's like, no, you don't need more backhand sauces up the middle. You're not lacking backhand no-look sauce up the middle. I promise you that. You're lacking that get the thing deep and overwhelm them and fucking hammer somebody and dig that puck out and come at them wave on wave and finish every fucking check and get in their ear and be the ones yelling, you're fucking scared, your bench is scared, and just take over a big manly game like that in a playoff series where you get that clinching game. You win game 6 or you win game 7. It hasn't happened. And I think, as they reflect year after year after year of these playoff disappointments, you look and you see the fact that we just get pushed out of the building, and we can't score the goal because we can't go get the puck because we don't have the momentum, and we're in our zone, and we have to break out and we have to regroup, and we can't get sustained pressure, and we can't get the other team on their heels because we're always on our heels when the going gets tough. And I think it was a serious DNA change they had to make. And you bring in the likes, like I look at this third line of Joshua Waugh, and maybe it's McMahon, maybe it's somebody else, but I think that's a line that you can just throw out there that just does those things and gets that puck deep and gets that team on their heels, scrambling around, throwing the puck around. And I think that opens up the offense for those big games when you're playing a playoff style of hockey. So I'm not so much looking forward to, trying to compare the season to last year's regular season, or to see if Michelli's on pace with Mitch Marner's points. I don't care about that. It's going to be in the nitty gritty down later in the season, when I think that these changes are, if they come to fruition, it's going to be there where you see it, where you see a team that just doesn't relinquish control late in a series, and they're able to get over the hump that way.
And to tell you what, with the Leafs, as far as it's still mind-bogglingly hard to fathom, in my opinion, how they go from shrivel like a raisin in Game 5 against Florida to this unbelievably heroic, when they had been written off, unbelievably heroic effort in Game 6 on the road to get that series back to Game 7, only to shrivel and just go into a little fetal position ball and go home in Game 7 all over again. It's hard to fathom. Like, there is that mental block still with this team, that in that biggest moment, how do we rise up instead of get just beaten down? And that's still where they've got to overcome it a little bit. Now, again, Florida's a beast, and nobody gave Florida a tougher test in the Cup playoffs last year than Toronto. So they've got that to hang their hat on, but still hard to explain Game 5 and 7 in that series last year at home. Yeah,
it's tough. There is a history of losing in heartbreaking ways in Toronto. And people called it after Game 5. They said, you know what's going to happen? They're going to win Game 6 down in Florida, and they're going to get everyone back on board. Reel us back in. Yeah. They're going to go back to Toronto, and they're going to lay a stinker. And it's like literally people are writing the script because they've seen it too many times. I think that's what will define the core four era, is just not having the character or the killer instinct to get over that. Still a very good hockey team. I mean, Game 3, you're up 2 goals, and it looks like, the percentages of them taking an absolute stranglehold 3-0 against that Florida Panther team. The defending, they had won Game 3, they would have won that series. I firmly believe. Anyone would have. I mean, you would think so, but it's just you could literally write the script, and people did all the time, and it just came to fruition. So devastating, and they needed a culture change, a DNA change, and they've got that to a large degree now. And with the emergence of Matthew Nyes and what he can do, if you talk about Scott Lawton, if he can be a big part of a playoff series, Bobby McMahon, Domi, Dakota Joshua, these guys are more suited, I think, to prevent that from happening. And it's not because they have highlight reel skill. It's because I think they're going to be willing to buy in together as a team and do the nitty gritty and the things that it takes to get over those late playoff series games.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to sum up what I was saying before I got cut off, that's what I was kind of leading to, is that the makeup and build of this team now, from the back end and the bottom six, they're built like a team that can get through the playoff wars that they needed in the 5 years prior with the core four. That was the point that I was trying to make. And I was saying, because of that, it's kind of what you were alluding to as well, Jay, that I think this top six steps up in the absence of Marner. I think we see Michelli rise in that. I think we see more point production from the third and fourth line guys. Nick Waugh is a guy who can give you a solid 15, 20 goals. So I think the makeup that they have, while it just looks different on paper than what we've seen, it's a good version of different, I think, in my eyes. I think they're built more to sustain playoff runs. In the regular season, they may look a little messy, but I feel like this is a team that I'm not betting on them to get knocked out in the first round like I'm always doing. This is a team I like. I actually have conference semifinals, stage of elimination plus 390, and conference finals at 10-1. I could see them making that next jump, but they have to get in the way of Florida at some point. Can they knock out the beast? That's really the biggest issue. The regular season, they managed well. They've gotten over that first round hump. It's a matter of slaying the dragon that is the Florida Panthers and then moving forward. And that's the question that remains. But I think the makeup of this team, like I said, to be ready for March, April, and beyond, is solid compared to what we've seen in previous years.
Yep. I was just going to say, Jay, with Alex's point, what I agree with is you might finish worse than last year in the regular season. I think that's very possible. Like, I'm not running to bet Toronto over their season point total this year. I'm not. I think when you look at it, plus I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation and tinkering with Craig Berube and this coaching staff, with obviously, especially up front, as you try to find the best fit with your four lines without Mitch Marner. So I'm not going over 99.5 points this year with the Leafs. I'm just not going to do that. I think they could take a step back in the regular season, but come playoff time, to Alex's point, this team looks like they could be in a better roster construction position to be a tougher, harder playoff team to beat come April. I agree with that fully.
Yeah, they could. And I mean, you never know what a season's going to bring. I don't think that regular season success means as much as people think it does. It certainly doesn't for the Maple Leafs. Their goaltending situation right now, we're dealing with Joseph Woll taking a leave for personal matters. And you see how, it feels a little thinner back there without both of them. I think they're very blessed to have two capable goaltenders. It's one of the best tandems in the league, and numbers-wise, they can both be phenomenal. But say one's hurt and one has an off year or doesn't quite have the stuff, and all of a sudden what we're talking about is all for naught. So you got to have, some luck as well. You talk about Austin Matthews and his health, and what he looked like was almost a shell of himself last year. I know his you look at the points he scored and your goals and you say, well, it's still pretty good. Well, yeah, but not for Austin Matthews, who's capable of, almost ripping off 70 in a year. Something was up with him. And, if all things go well and we have two healthy goaltenders, I think people are pretty confident in our defensemen. We got some depth forwards. We got some superstars up there. If they can remain healthy and, cover some of the things that they've been a little bit light on in the past, there is reason to believe in this, but it is an NHL team. It does take, all 20 plus guys. You've got a whole bunch of other good teams trying to impose their will on it as well. You don't know what's going to happen, but all you can do is think of, what have they done in the past and where have they come up short and what can we do to fix that? And that's been very, transparent from Tree Living, the general manager. And I think that the moves he's made have made sense. I think most people agree with them. I think the people that watch and pay attention know what it's supposed to look like and what it looks like when it's going bad. And I think they've tried to address that and fix that. And now a lot of it's up to Craig Berube at the helm to get the most out of these players over the next 82 games and see if they can be in the best spot they possibly can to knock off any team that comes in front of them. Because the Atlantic is no joke. They've always had to run up against the Bostons and the Tampas and the Floridas. And, you got to beat the best to be the best. But I know, like you said, that even last year when I don't know if they were constructed as well as they are now. I guess that's the argument. Took Florida to the brink and unfortunately relinquished the series and lost. But if they got by them, I thought they would have gone right to the Stanley Cup final and had a chance to win it. So it's the margins are very thin, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I think that what they've done makes sense to me, and we'll see what their season looks like. It's exciting.
No Leafs fan wants to hear this, but the best spot for them to finish would be in fourth place, first wild card position, and possibly get out of that division range. If they can find a way to maybe start off in the Metro side of things in the playoffs, I think that would be a huge boost for Toronto, where they wouldn't have to worry about possibly
worse and not as deep as the Atlantic.
And you possibly set yourself up with a matchup in the conference final against Florida. I think that's the luck draw for Toronto. If they can find themselves in the Metro Division quadrant and be a wild card team rather than a top three in the Atlantic.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be nice to have a different look and to have a different mentality and just to freshen things up, to have a look at someone in the Metro and get in there. And that's possible. I do not think they're going to be as good as they were in this regular season last year. I don't think they have kind of the DNA and the setup and everything to rattle off hundreds of points by multiple players and be at the top of the division. And again, I don't think it matters that you look at, the best team in the world right now is the Florida Panthers. They didn't give a rip about winning the division. They limped in on purpose. And I think that with the teams that are built better to be suited for the playoffs, I think they can afford that because that they know that when the going gets tough in the playoffs, they have what it takes to get over the hump and to get through it. And hopefully that is the Leafs this year.
Go, great stuff. Before we wrap it up, I'll give you a couple season-long props that I like. You know who we're talking about. I know he's one of Jay Rosehill's favorite Leaf players. He's become one of our favorite Leaf players. Hungry Nyes. Matthew Nyes for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Last year, I had 3 Matthew Nyes season-long player prop bets before the season started. One was 20 goals or more at minus 140. Easy cash. But I also had a small sprinkle on 30-plus goals. Plus 950 was the price on that. He ends up with 29. Can you fucking believe it? One shy of 30. That would have been a plus 950 hit on Matthew Nyes' 30 goals last year. But I also did have 50 points or more at minus 125 for Matthew Nyes last year. And he got obviously 58 points last year for the Leafs. So we got 2 of the 3. We got the 20-plus goals, the 50-plus points props. The 30-plus goals falls short by 1 fucking goal. And we would have had it at plus 9. That is tough. So this year, I've got 2 Matthew Nyes bets again this year. I've got him to get 30-plus goals to get to that 30 mark this year, plus 115 at FanDuel. All he's got to do is get 1 goal more than he did last year. I think he's going to be even better. I think it's that incremental improvement that we've seen from day one. For Matthew Nyes, we'll continue to see it. He's going to be a bona fide top-line player for this team, play on every power play situation for this team. So big opportunities to get 30 goals. So I like that at plus 115, 30 or more goals from Nyes. And I'm going to go with the 60-plus points prop as well for Matthew Nyes. Remember, he had 58 last year. So all he's got to do is get to 2 more points than he had last year, and we cash that. 60 or more points, minus 125 at FanDuel is the price of that right now. So there you go. A couple Matthew Nyes bets. 30 goals or more, plus 115. 50 points or more, minus 125. Or 60 points or more, I should say, minus 125. Jay, what do you think of those 2?
I like him, Matthew Nyes, like you said, he's getting better all the time. I think he's going to be the leader of this team if he's not already, which is insane because he's 22 years old. The sky's the limit for this guy. And with the departure of Mitch Marner, I think he's going to emerge as one of the leaders of this team and one of the workhorses that kind of blazes the trail and leads the way as far as what it looks like with his work ethic and his power and his ability to battle along the boards and come up with pucks is how it's going to look and how it looks in the playoffs. So, playing with those guys as well. I don't know if it's going to be with Michelli or not, but a little bit of chemistry goes a long ways, and there's no doubt about it that he can improve on those numbers last year, which he had kind of a breakout season, and I certainly don't think that's his ceiling. I think he's going to keep getting better as he ages and gets that experience here. So I like those bets for sure. I'm kind of sad you missed that 30, that big number by 1 goal. You think back to a season-long race and how many options and opportunities and posts he would have hit. Could have easily got
almost
to that.
Almost 10 to 1 odds on that Matthew Nyes 30 goals last year.
Now you're what price you get for 30 now? What was that?
30 now is plus 115.
You're never seeing a 950 with his name unless it's for 50 goals at this point now. So but no, I agree. I think and they got to have it right. He has to give them 30 and 60 with the absence of Marner and being on that top line for this team to stay afloat where they are.
He's going to be relied upon heavily for that production for the team. There's no doubt.
We will see. It's exciting.
No doubt. And for Goose, because he couldn't join us, but I'll let you know what he bet. He's on William Nylander, 40 goals or more plus 100, 50 goals or more plus 750 for William Nylander. Matthews, a bounce back year, 50 goals or more plus 240, says Goose. He likes that. He likes Stoley, the goalie. Anthony Stolarz over 24.5 regular season wins. And that might even be a better bet now with Joseph Woll missing a chunk of the season, it looks like, possibly to begin the year. So Stolarz over 24.5 regular season wins. And apparently, you could say this is a scorned Leaf fan since 1967, but he's in on the cup, plus 1,700 to win the East, plus 850. Matthews, Rocket Richard Trophy winner, plus 350. Nylander, Rocket Richard Trophy winner, plus 1,700. Nylander over 38.5 regular season goals, minus 105. Leafs regular season points over 99.5, minus 105. Matthews regular season goals over 44.5, minus 105. Matthews regular season points over 90.5, -105. Leafs finished second in the Atlantic, says Goose, at +350. And standings points for the Leafs in the month of October, over 14.5, +100. So liking the Leafs to start well is Goose here in the month of October. So those are all of Goose's. Hope you wrote them all down. Those are all of Goose's season-long player prop bets. So there you have it with that. I like the Stolars one. I do. That's probably the one I like the most. Stolars over 24.5 regular season wins.
And to mention, I know with Wall, except for having the absence, Dennis Hildeby, and from what I've seen, certainly has enough to be a capable guy to give you 10, 15 games in the time that Wall may be gone. So in that first half of the year, Hildeby's the backup. He could steal a game or two. He's a bigger guy. He's kind of in the same frame and size as Stolar. So I wouldn't be discouraged to or just run automatically auto fade the Leafs when it's Hildeby in there.
All right, our guy Jay Rosehill's got to run. We appreciate him very much for joining us here for this Toronto Maple Leafs season preview video. Jay, it's been awesome. It's going to be fun to watch this team as the post-Mitch Marner era gets underway. I think a shakeup had to happen with the main core of this team, and it'll be interesting to see if it provides better results come April and beyond. But Rosie, thank you very much for joining us, and like I said, we'll keep in touch.
It will be exciting, guys. I hope all those bets you laid out hit, and we're going to find out sooner than later. So exciting to get going. Thanks for having me.
No doubt. There he is, Jay Rosehill. Appreciate him joining us here on this Toronto Maple Leaf season preview video. Alex and I will wrap things up in just a moment or two. But before we do that, we will hear from our brand new smoke sponsor of the Ice Guys, our friends at Royal Cannabis.
Royal Cannabis, where the kings and queens shop.
Check it out, 20% off, promo code IceGuys, royalcannabisshop.com. For Alex B. Smith and Jay Rosehill, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been your Toronto Maple Leaf season preview video as 32 teams in 32 days rolls along, courtesy of the Ice Guys.